How would you say that countries engage with them now? I mean, considering the fact that there's still some of their policies that they recommend and people say, no, we cannot go down this path. Let's take for one, the issue of fuel subsidies, which has been, that's between, I think, the World Bank or the IMF, have prescribed that the only way to grow the oil industry in Nigeria is for you to remove subsidies so that investments can come in and you can open up the sector. But there are people who believe that is one way to impoverish even further the masses.
On the issue of subsidies, it's not just about petroleum, it's about subsidies generally. When you do the analysis on subsidies, what you find out is that the poor don't enjoy the subsidies. It's actually those who don't need the subsidies, who should pay the right price for an item, that end up enjoying the subsidy.
So on that
when they enjoy the subsidy, it takes away from the poor.
On that one, you agreed with the Jonathan government. Was part of the analysis they put forward.
Okay, so what happened is very strong stance on the need to remove subsidies. But what had happened with that government was that people saw the removal of subsidy as being the opportunity for government to have more money that was going to end up in corruption. So there was a major corruption issue that was just standing over the conversation. With what we have seen subsequently, there was reason for people to say that. At the time that that conversation was going on, I was at the World Bank. And one of the things that I did say was that it was necessary for the government to really make a strong case for how it was going to deal with this perception of corruption. And some people say, oh, by removing the subsidy, you removed the corruption. Well, it wasn't quite that. There were many other rigidities that were corruption-driven around the pricing of the product.
So is this something you will support now, the removal of subsidies?
Oh, I have maintained that we need to completely deregulate the sector. A full deregulation of the sector would enable us to identify which roles are best played by the market. The thing about removing the subsidy or trying to get an appropriate pricing is that if you did not do a full-scale, a wholesale sector change, what you would end up with is a price increase. And a price increase doesn't go deep. It's not structural. So over a period of time, you would get back to the same cycle of problem. And that was what I worried about when the government came in and adjusted the price slightly. I was calling for full deregulation of the sector so that the market would determine the incentives and therefore the entry of capital into the sector. The efficiency of the sector is very much tied to the way that the private sector assesses risks. Sometimes people worry about going full-scale market-driven for sectors. But what I would say to them is that it's especially our continent where we wrestle with systemic corruption, endemic corruption, we're better off allowing the market to discipline us. When the market forces discipline us, they figure a way to get us to a place, an outcome that is actually more egalitarian than some do-gooder government telling us that administratively they want to help all of us. They end up helping all of us to nosedive.
Just quickly now, let's talk about education. In April this year, the federal government says it's going to declare a state of emergency in the education sector. So I'm going to ask you, do you have any optimism, any faith in that?
I am forever an optimist. The day I stop being an optimist, I would just go like this.
So I take it that the answer is yes?
So my optimism is there. However, I am not an unrealistic optimist. I'm a pragmatist when it comes to that. So show me the prior actions, and then I would agree.
So for your optimism to be sustained, what parameters would you be looking at?
For the education sector?
Yes.
I would even go as far as saying, shouldn't this government remember that almost, what is this, 2018? Yes. As of 2006, what we had in the sector was an emergency. That was what that reform was about. We called it crisis in education. This is 11 years after. They are late to the party on this. So go back and see the whole articulation of the problems. They were identified, solutions were put forward. There shouldn't be any way that we don't continue to solve problems with variations here and there. But don't behave as if these are new problems. 11 years ago, we saw this situation in education. It was awful. So imagine where action has not been taken for 11 years in a coherent and sustained and decisive manner, where we are now. So, Maupe, I would say to them, find the file that says 2006-2007 reforms in education. Read.
With all that you've been through, I mean, you've been in government, you've been out of government, do you still believe in the project called Nigeria? Some people have said our problems are structural. Some people have said, oh, the president says it's a question of process, not structure. And there's a lot of talk around restructuring. Do you still have faith in this project called Nigeria?
I do. Maybe I'm a sufferhead, as they say in Nigeria, because I mean, look at what I go through, sort of saying that, we must not keep quiet.
But what informs your faith?
So what informs my faith is that when I look at all the ingredients that you need for nation building, we've got it. Our missing link just happens to be having the kind of stock of leadership on a consistent basis that thinks of Nigeria, that thinks of how Nigeria can claim the 21st century and therefore are ready to sacrifice whatever it would take. It's time to stop telling the citizens to sacrifice while they watch those asking them to sacrifice have a good life. So, we've got to realign this and, find that stock of leadership. And leadership here doesn't mean find the president. I'm talking about the elite class of any society. It's always the driver of a vision that everybody then buys into and works toward. So I am an incurable optimist. I'm a congenital optimist. I'm an undying optimist. So forever, I am going to just keep working and keep talking and keep organizing, because the day that the Nigerian citizens awaken to how great this concept of the office of the citizen is, meaning you don't need a title in government in order to govern. You govern by being on the demand side for good governance. As a citizen, your voice is important. You must give feedback. Accountability is key. You must not compromise on it. Not even if you're asking your husband to be accountable or your wife to be accountable.
Well, Dr. Obi Ezekwesili, thank you for coming on Hard Copy.
Thank you.
That's our program tonight, but it's not over till we hear from you. Talk to us using the handles on your screen. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf. Good night.